In the spring of 1945, the defeat of Nazi Germany was imminent. The Allies had encircled the Third Reich from the west and east. Many Nazi leaders chose suicide to avoid capture, while others were detained to account for their crimes. Along with the collapse of the Nazi regime, Allied forces also unveiled one of the greatest atrocities of the 20th century, the Nazi concentration camps. When American, Soviet, and British soldiers liberated these camps in early 1945, they were shocked by horrific scenes that were almost unimaginable to the human mind. For example, at Buchenwald camp, liberated in April 1945, American soldiers found piles of corpses scattered in ditches and carts, spreading the foul stench of death in the air. The surviving prisoners were in a state of acute starvation, their bodies emaciated like skeletons, with shrunken stomachs due to prolonged lack of food. The horrors revealed in the concentration camps were not merely the result of wartime chaos, but rather the fruit of planned policies by the Nazi regime. The systematic suffering of the prisoners occurred due to direct orders or approval from high-ranking Nazis, including doctors who betrayed their professional oaths in the name of fanatical ideology. One person responsible for the deplorable conditions of these prisoners was Karl Brandt, a surgeon and SS officer who held a top position in the Nazi medical hierarchy. Karl Brandt earned his medical degree in 1928 and specialized as an expert in head and spinal injuries. Brandt's career skyrocketed after he joined the Nazi Party in January 1932. In 1933, he had joined the Sturmabteilung, and shortly thereafter, in July 1934, he was accepted as an SS officer with the rank of Untersturmführer. His abilities and loyalty caught Adolf Hitler's attention. Since the summer of 1934, Karl Brandt was appointed as Hitler's personal physician, tasked with accompanying and treating the Führer wherever he went. Brandt thus entered Hitler's inner circle, often present at Hitler's private residence in Berghof, and associating closely with other prominent Nazi figures. This prestigious position made Brandt's star shine even brighter. He continued to receive promotions in the SS, reaching the rank of Major General in January 1943. The peak of Brandt's power came in August 1944, when Hitler appointed him as Reich Commissioner for Health and Sanitation. This position made Karl Brandt the highest authority in the field of health in Nazi Germany. He had the power to issue instructions to all government medical organizations, the Nazi Party, and even military health services. With such immense authority, Brandt was at the forefront of formulating and implementing the Hitler regime's medical policies, including the most deadly ones that misused medical science to kill humans. One of the darkest programs led by Karl Brandt was what the Nazis called the euthanasia program. In 1939, under Hitler's secret order, Brandt, along with Führer's chancellery official Philipp Buhler, launched a secret operation codenamed Aktion T4. The Aktion T4 program aimed to eliminate people deemed unworthy of life in Nazi German society. Groups such as frail elderly people, those with mental disorders, severely ill patients considered incurable, and children born with physical or mental disabilities. They were systematically killed using poisonous gas or lethal injections, whether in hospitals, nursing homes, or other care facilities. It is estimated that more than 70,000 German citizens, including men, women, and children, suffering from mental or physical disabilities were killed between 1939 and 1941 under this euthanasia program. In the Nazi view, these unfortunate individuals were labeled as useless eaters, seen as merely burdening Germany's war economy and therefore deserving of extermination. Not stopping at the hidden massacre of the sick and disabled, Karl Brandt was also involved in equally horrific Nazi medical experiments. As Reich Health Commissioner, Brandt had authority over human research programs in concentration camps, and he was later charged with special responsibility for a number of barbaric experiments on prisoners of war and camp inmates without their consent. The prisoners were used as live guinea pigs for various pseudo-medical projects that took place throughout the war. Various experiments conducted under Brandt's supervision or knowledge included freezing experiments, malaria infection, mustard gas exposure, sulfanilamide trials, and others. Almost all of these experiments ended tragically. Many prisoner subjects died as a result of the procedures, while survivors suffered permanent physical disabilities and deep psychological trauma for life. Toward the end of the war, Karl Brandt, who had been Hitler's loyal henchman, ironically fell victim to misfortune due to his master's own suspicions. Despite being in the inner circle, Brandt took a bold step for his family as Germany's situation worsened in April 1945. He secretly sent his wife and son out of Berlin to an area expected to be occupied by the Western Allies, hoping they would avoid the approaching Soviet forces. When Hitler learned of this action, the dictator was furious. On April 16, 1945, Hitler ordered the Gestapo to arrest Karl Brandt on charges of treason. Brandt was dragged to a summary court and sentenced to death by his own regime in the final moments of World War II. Fortunately for Brandt, the execution was not carried out. He was saved by the intervention of two other high-ranking Nazis, Heinrich Himmler and Albert Speer, who convinced Hitler to suspend the sentence. Just a few days later, the situation changed dramatically. Hitler committed suicide, and Admiral Karl Donitz took over the remaining Nazi German government. Donitz immediately issued an order to release Brandt on May 2, 1945, revoking his detainee status. However, this freedom was short-lived. After Germany's surrender, Allied forces began sweeping up the remnants of Nazi officials. On May 23, 1945, Karl Brandt was captured by British forces in the city of Flensburg, along with other Nazi figures. After his detention, Karl Brandt faced international justice. He became a main defendant in the Nazi Doctors Trial in Nuremberg, which began on December 9, 1946, and pitted Brandt and 22 other defendants against the American military tribunal at the Nuremberg Palace of Justice. The U.S. prosecutor, Brigadier General Telford Taylor, presented charges that Karl Brandt and his colleagues had committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. In detail, Brandt was accused of conducting medical experiments without consent on prisoners of war and civilians from various occupied countries, resulting in murders, tortures, and other inhumane acts. He was also accused of playing a role in the mass murder of prisoners deemed mentally ill, incurably sick, elderly, or disabled through the euthanasia program using poisonous gas, lethal injections, and other methods. The verdict was then handed down on August 19, 1947. The court declared Karl Brandt guilty of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and membership in a criminal organization. On June 2, 1948, at Landsberg prison in Bavaria, the sentence was finally carried out. Karl Brandt was hanged to death along with 6 other war criminals, ending his life at the age of 44. This former personal physician to Hitler met his end as a war criminal executed for crimes against humanity.